So how do we begin cultivating a curious and receptive mind, especially when we suffer under the conditions of survival patterns that are hardwired in our brains to brace up against or turn away from anything that's unfamiliar? When you step back and look at this from a broader perspective, we're born into the world curious. The whole point of this life on earth inside this body is to have your own personal direct experience living in a body, feeling human emotions, learning from trial and error. There's nothing wrong with learning by trial and error, by exploring things and finding out what you like and what you don't like. This is usually this is the ideal rite of passage into an earthly experience. But unfortunately for a lot of us, what happens is we are born into the world, and with a snip of the surgeon's scalpel and a breath of this world's dysfunctional air, we slowly begin to trade in our curiosity and our connection to truth to relate with this unconscious, fear-driven world. And in that moment, we begin to experience, well, let's put it like this. When a kid touches the stove and burns his hand, he's not going to touch the stove again because he knows it hurts. So we experience 2 or 3 meaningful and impactful experiences in our youth. Usually that's all it takes for us to make up our mind that anything that's unfamiliar is unwanted. Anything that is not anything that's unfamiliar is not only unwanted, but is going to bring us pain and physical discomfort. And so what we do is we pattern our lives on these survival patterns, these habit patterns that are basically built on avoiding and hiding and not wanting to be dominated, avoiding looking bad. Basically, we experience that feeling of neglect, abandonment, or abuse once, and in our minds, we make up a decision that we're never, ever, ever going to feel that feeling again. And we set forth to pattern our lives to ensure that that doesn't happen. But the thing that also doesn't happen is that we cut off our curious nature. We no longer become open and receptive to new experiences. Anything that's outside the scope of what we know, which is very limited, becomes not only unacceptable, it becomes a threat. It becomes a threat, and it's something that we're not willing to experience at all. So how do you get a brain that's in this position and has been patterning itself for decades like this? How do you get it to become curious and receptive and open again like a child? Well, we have found that doing these possibility mantras consistently begin to neutralize these survival patterns, and they shrink them into a place of dormancy, you could say. And then we start to install these override patterns. We call them, they're based on these principles of beingness. Tolerance and compassion, expanding our capacity to give and receive love, humility and gratitude, regulating our emotions through connection rather than attaching to drugs and alcohol, taking consistent action in support of our healthy dreams and desires, recognizing and acting upon truth and intuitive insights in the moment. These are all the patterns that we install to override those survival patterns. And these patterns, these override patterns built upon these fundamental principles of beingness kind of bring us into a place of being able to thrive, increasing our capacity to see and be seen, to hear and be heard, to allow others to love us and to love the world in a different way. And it's absolutely essential that this happens if we're going to, that we can only create new experiences with a curious and receptive mind. So I hope that was helpful for you today. And if you want more information about our Conscious Creators process, feel free to email me directly at addressingthecause@gmail.com. Addressing, ADDRESSING, the cause, CAUSE @gmail.com. Thank you so much.